Hey to the most amazing nurses. It is Dr. V here with Morning Infusion with Dr. V podcast, where we are intentional about teaching nurses how to work from anywhere around the world, making money and owning your own time, building profitable nurse coaching and consulting businesses. You will hear from amazing guests that have grown their companies and want to share insight into how you can do the same to change the face of healthcare as we know it. If you want to grow your businesses and leverage your knowledge as a nurse to grow wildly successful businesses at the top, instead of working your way to the top, head on over and join our Millionaire Nurse CEO group on Facebook, where you can ask questions and get updates on our live and virtual events to help you grow your businesses. Good morning. Good morning. So today we have our special guest. Her name is Dr. Amber Lynn Gilbert. So welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Anytime. So let's start it off. So we want to ask about you, right? So bio, like how would people describe you if you had to write everything in a bio? So tell us about yourself.
Sure. So, as you said, my name's Amber Gilbert. So, I am a nurse practitioner, a DMP, and I have a certification in family nurse practitioner. And so, I started my nursing career in the ICU, and then I went back to nurse practitioner school, and I started my nurse practitioner career in family practice. And then I've actually called occupational medicine home for about the last 5 years. And that has been a great fit for me. So I have over 15 plus years experience working in healthcare. And then in the more recent years, I became certified as a life coach and career coach, I guess I should say. And so I've been working with healthcare moms to essentially help them create the life that they want, to help them have better, what I like to say, life work balance. I think we always say work life, and I'm like, life comes first, then work, to have better balance. And honestly, I know it sounds cheesy, but to kind of live the life you want, because I think sometimes it's a little bit like we feel maybe that we don't have control over how some of the things go, but we really do. And so having a vision for what you want your motherhood and your nursing journey to look like and really creating that.
Love it. I love it. I love it. And that's such a needed thing, such a needed thing. So we're going to go back to the beginning. So why did you even become a nurse from the very beginning?
Yeah, that's a great question. I guess I haven't thought about that for a while. Honestly, when I went to growing up, I always wanted to do something. Kind of my two things that I'd always toyed around with were education and healthcare. And I think it's just because I've always kind of liked to teach or, interact with people. But then I was really drawn to healthcare or like science. I love science in school. And so when I went to undergrad, I kind of knew I wanted to do something in healthcare. And I was kind of looking like maybe pharmacy, physician assistant, something. And then actually I just did kind of like an intro class for nursing and shadowed a nurse. And I just kind of felt that it was right for me, is the best way to describe it. Like I knew I wanted to help people. And so I started down that path, and it's been the greatest decision I made. So
I love it. I love it. So now you went from being a bedside nurse to being a family nurse practitioner. What drove you in that direction?
Yeah. So kind of as I said, when I started looking at what I wanted to do, I entertained like physician assistant. And so once I started nursing school, I found out that, you could advance your degree to become a nurse practitioner. And so I kind of had that in the back of my head as an option. And I'll be honest, I loved being a bedside nurse. Even when I first started working as a nurse practitioner, I missed it a lot. But I just wanted to kind of help people more, because working in the ICU, you see a lot of sick people. And sometimes it was things that could have been prevented, or if they had had some better primary care or interventions in the beginning, some of it could have been avoided. And so I just kind of had this drive to kind of help before they got to the hospital, essentially, and kind of also create some more lasting relationships with patients because I am a relationship builder. It's my strength. It's also something I enjoy. That's like my favorite part of my career. And so being able to kind of develop more consistent relationships with people too.
I love, what you talked about when you were talking about prior to, because I say this all the time, we cannot fix in 10 days what has you've
Hmm.
done over 10 years, right?
Hmm.
And being very proactive about healthcare is one of the things that I love about teaching nurses to go into business, especially my health coaches, right? And helping them to understand, number one, business is the way that America is built.
Yes.
Be very clear on that. And
Hmm.
so in order for you to be successful, typically, business is where you should go. So now let's talk about you being pregnant during this pandemic now.
Yes.
So now, were you pregnant prior to the pandemic or did you get pregnant during the pandemic?
So I guess you could say a little bit of both. I found out that
Okay.
I didn't get pregnant during the pandemic, but I found out I was pregnant. I think that so it was the very first of March or April. So it's like right after everything shut down is when I found out that I was pregnant.
So now going into it, because I remember, and I wasn't a bedside nurse at that time, I was in management at that time.
Hmm.
But I remember having or being afraid,
Yeah.
right? Having this fear when it came to the nurses who were down in the emergency department. And one of the things that I feared more so because I was the ER nurse for years, one of the things that I feared was we number one, we didn't know what it was going to do.
Hmm.
Number two, we didn't have proper protective equipment in order to be able to handle ourselves. It was you wear a mask all day long as opposed to, what we normally do. I mean, the people would come in, the regulatory people would come in. If you didn't pull your mask off in between rooms, that would get you
Yeah.
what's called a RFI, which is room for improvement. But now it was okay because of the shortages. So tell me about how you just kind of how you navigated that.
Yeah, that's actually a great question. And I'll say I had a lot of fear as well because so a little bit of a backstory, which is, I'll be honest, like when I found out I was pregnant, it was kind of like a oh no moment because we were kind of in this process the few months leading up to it where we were talking about when we wanted to have a second child. And as more information was coming out about this pandemic, I kind of said to my husband, I think we should put this on hold because I work in healthcare. This is going to be, we had never experienced anything like this, but you just know from, things that you've learned in history that something like this could be really, catastrophic. And I was like, I can't be in a pandemic pregnant. And then, of course, as God would have it, here I was. I found out I was pregnant a couple weeks later. And so initially it was a lot of high emotions because there was a lot of fear. Like you're saying, I'm like, we don't know, we didn't know much about it. We didn't know, what was going to be the repercussions. We didn't know about proper protection or were we going to have that. I will say that I was very fortunate that the department that I worked in, it was small and the physician that was leading us kind of immediately went out and purchased us kind of more advanced gear that she was like, we're just going to use it to be on the safe side. And this is before, I didn't tell anyone I was pregnant for a couple of months. And so, and the other thing, which this was looking back, it was a blessing. At the time, it was scary because we had also just purchased a home. I ended up, I was partially furloughed because, of course, as you know, that happened to a lot of people because I was working in a clinic setting. Well, patient volumes went drastically down, right? And so here I was pregnant with a second child. I'm working half my hours and I had just bought a new home. And so it was a lot of fear and stress and anxiety. Honestly, for me, what helped ground me is I just focused on I was like, what I have to do right now is focus on keeping myself, my unborn child, my young child, and my husband safe, because my husband's also a teacher. So we're in two professions that highly exposed, right? And there was kind of a lot of, I don't know what, kind of controversy, I guess, but I really just kind of focused on, I'm just going to do the best I can to keep myself safe while I'm pregnant. And I kind of had to let some of the other stuff just, we're going to do the best we can and not stress on all of that stuff, and kind of ground myself in just staying safe.
I think that your whoever your boss was who got the equipment in order for y'all to be safe. I think that's a valiant thing for sure,
Yes, it
right?
was. Yes.
And understanding that, that's kind of what leaders do, right? We just
Yes.
make a way, right?
Yes. Absolutely.
And I've found that, sometimes that's not the case, but, I just, kudos to her for doing that. Now, during that time, I'm sure you had some anxiety. So tell us a little bit about some of the ways, some of the principles, some of the things that you do in order to overcome anxiety.
Yep. So actually during this time, I had kind of, I think back to it now, and it's crazy to think how it was 3 years ago, because so coming into the pandemic, I had a patient situation at work that nothing catastrophic had happened. It just didn't necessarily go the way that I wished it had gone. And I did everything that I was supposed to, but as you can probably understand, when you're in healthcare and you're taking care of people, you never want someone to have anything but the best outcome. And so I was already kind of struggling with a little bit of anxiety, just because I was kind of processing that situation. And then we entered right into this pandemic, and I was pregnant. And I had a lot of anxiety at the time. And it was starting to impact me in all areas of my life. I started not sleeping well and different things like that. So honestly, one of the first things I did is I went out and I got signed up for therapy. And at this time they were doing it telehealth, and it worked out because my hours were cut. And so once a week I started just meeting virtually with a therapist, which was so helpful because I could just talk things out, all the things that I knew that were coming up, and all the things that that I was worried about. And so that's one of the first things I did for myself. And I think that was probably one of the best decisions I made. The other thing that I did was, even though therapy was very effective, I did end up going on like a low dose, like anti-anxiety medication. Just because, again, it was like, I can't be at this level of stress during a pandemic when I'm trying to stay healthy and I need to sleep and take care of myself. And so those were kind of the first two things I did. But in doing that, I learned a lot of different, it's actually also kind of a time when then I started diving into a lot of, I guess, what you call like self-help, and learning different ways to process my emotions and, use my mindset or my thoughts to help me, because I just really wanted to help take care of myself.
I think that is that is great. One of the things in the African American community that we struggle with sometimes is therapy. For years it was such a taboo subject.
Mhm.
And what I say about therapists is therapists are, because before the age of 7, you have this primary programming that happens within your brain, right? And it's that hardwiring. And the reality is that most of the time we are wired for success, but we're programmed for failure. Okay. And so we have to be very clear about that. And what a
Mhm.
therapist does is, a therapist helps you heal from that prior to your 7 years old life. And then a coach just leads you into the greater life, a greater you that you need to be. So
Absolutely.
I think that is, getting a therapist is definitely one of the things that you absolutely need to do, for sure, for sure. And we're going to go to a commercial break, and we'll be right back. Okay.
Okay.
Our live event is going down twice a year in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, called the Millionaire Nurse CEO Conference. We will be covering the blueprint and master plan to grow a wealthy and flourishing company. We love that you listen to the podcast, but we want you in the room. We will be sharing insights on marketing and sales strategies so that you are able to create more impact and make more money, creating more freedom so that you can do the things that you love. So join us for the nursing event of the century. Go to vpnursing.com to sign up for this life-changing event. So we're back. So now let's talk about navigating toxic work environments.
Sure.
So, nursing can be toxic traditionally. So go ahead, tell me what are some things that you do to navigate or have done to navigate?
Yeah. Honestly, there's a few different things. What I will say is essentially what I had to learn is I'm very much a people pleaser. And so what I realized is that sometimes I was getting frustrated or burnout because I was constantly saying yes to things. I didn't want to say no. I didn't want to put a boundary up because I also, and this is something that honestly, coaching has kind of helped me recognize, or kind of this whole journey that I've been on is, I also kind of have this underlying belief, I guess I would say, that like I'm a very hard worker and I want to be seen as a hard worker. So I don't want, it was kind of an internal struggle of, well, if I say no or I put up a boundary, I don't want it to seem like I'm not willing to be a hard worker or I'm trying to get out of anything. You know what I'm saying? And so, but essentially what was happening is I was absolutely miserable because I wasn't putting any boundaries up and I wasn't taking care of myself. And then it was starting to become I was feeling like I didn't want to continue as a nurse practitioner. I was like feeling like, what am I doing? And so essentially what I had to start doing is recognizing that I had to start saying yes to myself and protecting my own peace, and start putting up some boundaries or start saying no. And essentially I was avoiding that because it's uncomfortable to say no, right? Like it's uncomfortable to have these conversations and ask for what you need. And I think especially as women, we aren't really taught that, right? I think especially for women, nurses and mothers, like it's ingrained in us to put everyone else before ourselves. Eat patients, our kids, everyone. That's right. We're supposed to sacrifice ourselves for everyone else. But then it kind of got to this point where I'm like, okay, but is this what I'm going to do for, however many years of my life? And it was impacting how I showed up with my kids or my husband. And so eventually I kind of had to have that almost like conversation with myself and look at what can I control, what can't I control, and what do I want to do about it. And then I just started making baby steps to say no to things or put up boundaries or to ask for what I need. And I just kind of had to ride through the discomfort, to get to the other side of that.
And the more that you say no, the better it is. I remember during the height of the pandemic, they had those COVID testing. I tell this all the time. They had COVID testing because, I went to full-time entrepreneurship very shortly after then. I had COVID testing, and I've been a nurse for 30 years. So I don't, people are like, well, I'm afraid I'm going to lose my skills. No, I'm not afraid I'm going to lose nothing. I'm good. Okay. And so when they start talking about the COVID testing, I was like, as soon as I got a course on it, I was like, I don't want to do this. And then I had a friend the other week, I'm speaking at her conference, and she was talking to me about doing assessments. And I said, I would love to help out and maybe do that as another stream of income, but that's not what I want to do, right? And saying no to good so that you can get to best, right? Yes. That is key, because if you don't set up those boundaries, then you're spreading yourself so thin and you're not good to anybody. And I tell everybody all the time, I'm not pouring anybody from my cup. I am pouring from my saucer. Every morning I get up and I overflow, right? I get up and I pour into myself before
Yes.
anybody gets up in the morning. And then after they get up, then I can pour the best of me into them because I have those boundaries that are set up so that I don't have to do those. And that is key.
Absolutely. And I think another piece, like, which is important that you bring up, and something that I learned is, and I see a lot of, nurses or nurse practitioners, it's, they know they want to make a change. And I did this too. And so they look at what other people are suggesting. And then, for myself, I was kind of trying different things, even like in business. And I was like, well, this doesn't feel right, or this doesn't feel right. And I felt discouraged. But one of the things I learned is, I think one of the first steps is to really get to know yourself. What am I good at? What are my values? What do I want to prioritize? What's the vision that I want to hold? Because what you might like is different from what I might like. And that's going to depend on what we say yes and no to. So that's a lot of what I work on with my clients too, is kind of getting that solid foundation of really honoring yourself, because that also helps you make those decisions that are going to serve you best.
Love it, love it, love it. So now tell me about you going into life coaching.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
transition into life coaching. So let's talk about that.
Sure. So, I mean, this is kind of how the journey went. So, like you said, I started with therapy and kind of unpacked and went through a lot of that. And then once I kind of got things, my child was born, we were all safe and healthy. Then I was kind of like, okay, now I want to make some changes, and I want to start working. Hired a coach myself, a life coach. And, I was doing a lot of self, kind of diving into that space myself. And it changed my life. And it was so transformational for me. And I learned so many things. And just the process of it, I was like, this is what I want to do. Because, of course, it's highly, um, it's highly relationship, right? Like, you're building relationships with people and helping them. And it's like, this is exactly why I went into healthcare. But I love it because it's helping other moms or other women in nursing, just like what I've gone through. And so that's essentially how I started. After I kind of experienced the transformation in the process, I fell in love with it. And then I just kind of dove headfirst into learning more and training more, and starting my own business.
So what skill set do you think most help you? Because one of the things that I think that, no, not one of the things that I think, I know for a fact that whenever you are in business, you are pulling some of the skill sets from when you worked for other people, right?
Yep.
So what are some of the skill sets that you think that are important when, as it relates to life coaching, or that you have gained, or that has helped you on your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and I love this conversation, because I think sometimes nurses or nurse practitioners, we almost look at our skill set just in healthcare, and it's like we really have learned so many skills that apply to so many areas, and especially business. One of the things I think for life coaching is we are already coaches as nurses and nurse practitioners. We are very good at talking one-on-one with people, listening, looking at what they need or what's going on with them. And I kind of relate the two, life coaching and being a nurse practitioner, because I'm like, the first thing we do as nurses even is, what's going on with my patient? And we get some history, we assess them, and we look at, okay, what's going on and what do I think they maybe need help with? And then we intervene in a very holistic way, right? We're looking at all aspects of their life. And that's essentially what I do as a life coach. And we're very good at talking with people and building relationships and connecting one-on-one with people. Um, I'm sure we've all had experiences where a patient was like, that went so much better than I thought, or you really helped me feel better, or, where I just think that's one of the best skill sets we have, but also just our natural intuition and being able to look at someone whole. Yeah, I think those are some of the biggest ones.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So, do you think that being a life coach is something that you ever thought that you were going to do?
I don't know, honestly. I don't think so. I think that when I first started my nursing career, you know, I think I kind of thought maybe I would go back to school. And then even when I started, it's interesting, even when I started as a nurse practitioner, I kind of thought I would always be in family practice, and that changed. And I honestly, I don't even think I knew what a life coach was, you know,
I
up
think
until recently.
one of the things that I do know is that, America is built off of, and we had this conversation just prior to us getting on, America is built off of small business or business, right?
Mhm.
Some of the richest people that we've ever encountered, they were in business for themselves. And the fact that, 100% of your because we think that we have to go back to school and we got to get educated over and over and over again. You and I both drank the Kool-Aid, okay? And went back and got educated to the hilt, right?
Mhm.
And the reality is that we are now walking in our purpose, right? We are
Yes.
now walking in the purpose that God has designed for us. And that is key, because once you start walking in the purpose that God has designed for you, then there's so many other rewards that can be given to you outside of there. So
Yes.
I think that is one of the greatest things. So if someone were looking to hire, so what would be instances where people would need to hire a life coach?
Honestly, it can be just about anything. A lot of the clients that I've worked with is sometimes they're feeling like a big thing is like they just kind of feel stuck where they're at. Like maybe they're burnout, maybe they're not happy with their career, but they're kind of like, I don't know where to start, or I'm not even sure what I need. Which is kind of how I started. I was like, I know I want things to be different, but I'm not even sure kind of where I want to go. So that's a big one. I think also just anytime maybe you're wanting to change things in your life and you're wanting, and maybe you've tried and it hasn't been successful, or you want some additional support, guidance, even reassurance and validation is a huge thing that a lot of, the nurses or nurse practitioners that I work with, that's a huge thing that a lot of us need too. Um, so, yeah, it can be anything, but I think a lot of it is just knowing you want something to be different and wanting some extra support, guidance to get there.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Now, tell us, where can they find you?
Yes, absolutely. So on Facebook, you can look me up. My personal profile is just Amber Gilbert, or I do have a Facebook page that's Amber Lynn Coaching. On Instagram, I'm Healthcare Mom Coach, and I'm also on LinkedIn with Amber Gilbert.
Sweet, 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 sweet.
Yes.
So if you want to get some life coaching, I encourage you to look up Dr. Amber. So we have a Monetize Your Knowledge Facebook group. That's on Facebook. It's called a Monetize as a Nurse Coach. Well, actually, it's the Millionaire Nurse CEO now. But we have a masterclass. We have master classes every single month. Our next one is April 18th, 2023. I encourage everyone to sign up for it. It has been a pleasure speaking to you, Dr. Amber, today. And so we're about to be out. Hey to the most amazing nurses. It is Dr. V here with Morning Infusion with Dr. V podcast, where we are intentional about teaching nurses how to work from anywhere around the world, making money and owning your own time, building profitable nurse coaching and consulting businesses. You will hear from amazing guests that have grown their companies and want to share insight into how you can do the same to change the face of healthcare as we know it. If you want to grow your businesses and leverage your knowledge as a nurse to grow wildly successful businesses at the top, instead of working your way to the top, head on over and join our Millionaire Nurse CEO group on Facebook, where you can ask questions and get updates on our live and virtual events to help you grow your businesses.